Welcome to this week's episode of Aiding Your Game. This week, the format is going to be a little bit different as we work on some equipment updates. Today, we're going to focus on building a better encounter. We're going to be focusing on Dungeons & Dragons 5e, but the principles here will remain the same regardless of the game system that you're playing. So, let's jump right in. If you have player characters who are just rolling right through your encounters without so much as a challenge or a scratch, if they're just being able to dominate your entire table, it may be time to change up the process a little bit. That's what we're going to be focusing on today, making an encounter that's going to be a little more challenging for the player characters, hopefully driving more immersion and a little more thought process from the player's side. We're going to just be using the Monster Manual and the Dungeon Master's Guide. And while it does take a little bit of prep, it doesn't take hours. We're going to build a full encounter here. We're just going to start out with a blank sheet of paper. I'm going to write these down so you can follow along. So we're going to work on an encounter plan. This is an important step in prepping up for an encounter. Like I said, a little bit of pre-work goes a long way. In the encounter plan, we want to answer the 5 important questions of who, what, where, when, why, and how. That ensures we're making encounters that feel more grounded and lead us to have some ideas in case we need to improv to keep everything relative. So I used polls on social media to get some parameters. It seems that the most common group sizes generally include 3 players. And on an average, they start at level 5. That's what we'll use to answer the who the encounter plan is for question. And based on the polls, the most common classes include a paladin, a warlock, and a barbarian. Now, this of course will vary at each table, but for this example, we're using the data based on the polls. So I add the common traits, or what the classes are most well known for, so we can address their standard tactics and challenge them both as a group and individually. So next we need to answer, what's the encounter's goal? So I just rolled on the encounter chart in the DM's guide. It resulted in clear a ruin so it can be rebuilt and reoccupied. And where is it? I just selected foothills, like forested foothills. Since it's ruins, we can expect some exposed upper ruins and a dungeon below. And then when? We want a single session game. So the entire ruins exploration should fit in one session and one in-game day. And why are the adventurers taking on this adventure? Let's say a noble lord asked them to. And they've promised a modest reward and for the PCs to keep any loot found. And finally, how can they partake in the adventure? Well, they have to travel to the ruins, enter them and explore, confront the Denzines, and destroy this session's big bad evil guy. And there we have our encounter plan. This is just a synopsis of what we hope this one shot will look like at the gaming table. Now, of course, you have to RP the noble asking the adventurers to help, or however you start the session, but we're just going to be focusing on the encounter building. So on page 82 of the DM guide, that gives us the XP thresholds as well as the encounter modifiers. I'm also noting the Adventure Day XP on page 84, since I'm going to expand separately from this video. Using the chart information, I decide this adventure day will have one easy, one medium, one deadly, and one other easy encounter in that order. That gives me an approach, and I can start to decide what these encounters will be collectively to tie them together. I also staggered and didn't have the deadly, or who I feel the big bad evil guy should be, at the very end of the session. This will throw the players for a little bit of a loop and give them a little more challenge. Page 304 of the DM guide gives us creatures by habitat for hills, and page 306 gives us creatures by challenge rating. I'm going to use both of these when I start building the encounter. I put a quick chart together so I can see the adjustment CR by difficulty level, number of opponents. I generally have this prepped for my campaigns on a spreadsheet, but I wanted to write it out so you could see how fast you can do this process. So knowing the party makeup we're using, a divide and conquer tactic is more challenging. So I'm going to start out with lower CR opponents in greater numbers. I go back to the monster lists and look for something interesting at the levels I'm looking for. So wanting to vary it up a little bit, I'm going to select a couple of different types of opponents. I choose 4 scouts and 2 swarms of insects. All of these are the same CR level, so it's a total of 6, which falls into our easy category. I'm starting to get an idea brewing on what I see as an overall adventure. So I'm getting pretty excited starting to put some of the pieces together. Since I'm doing that, I'm also going to fill out what the opponents will be for the other encounters for this adventuring session, but we won't cover those today. I add the treasure each opponent will have from the averages in the DM's guide, as well as what a single horde treasure would be. That's the loot the PCs can get. And then setting the stage, I quickly and roughly map out how I expect the adventure to begin, with the PCs heading towards the ruins and adventure location. Getting myself an idea, I start to plan where I want my opponents who are going to be watching for intruders. These scouts are the lookouts, and they're hiding in ambush. So this brings the player's passive perception versus the stealth of the opponents into play. Adds another layer. I don't expect the opponents to be standing and waiting for conflict. They're pretty sly and sneaky, and should be able to get a turn before the PCs if the dice aren't going against us. Deciding where my villains will be, I start to think about a strategy. Scout 1 will hide behind a tree. He'll actually make an attack with a bow first, targeting an armored PC for his first round, then move in with a melee weapon to try to flank somebody. Scout number 2 is going to stay hunkered down and make a bow attack. I've decided his first shot will be near an armored PC, and the arrow has a sealed wasp's nest. That'll be released, making the swarm of insects attack at the end of the villain's turn. Scout number 3 is going to do the same as scout number 2. This puts both the swarms of insects in an area right by the PCs, allowing scout 2 and 3 to continue ranged attacks. This is going to focus more on one armored person and the magic user. So the warlock who thinks he's going to stay behind is going to be harried by arrows. Scout number 4, he'll be using a melee attack, expecting Scout 1 to flank an enemy so they have advantage together. Now we've only got 6 enemies on the field, but 2 of them are using ranged, 2 of them are using melee, and we've got 2 swarms of insects, plenty to keep the PCs occupied. These scouts and insects, though an easy encounter, provide some interesting flavor and should be a challenge as an easy encounter goes. Add in any challenges with difficult terrains from the ruins, and the PC should be more agile, creative, and tactical in this encounter. This easy encounter just added a new level of challenge to the PC's adventure. In addition to this encounter, we also have the bones for 3 more encounters, allowing us to build out a game session with 4 encounters, interesting location, NPC interactions, and the opportunity to build on high and low feedback that you'll receive from the players to open up even more storytelling games together. I hope this was enjoyable, and until next week, be sure to comment below. Where will your adventures take you? Thanks for watching our video. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we'd love to have you subscribe. Feel free to hit that button if you care to get notifications for when we post new content. Leave your comments below and help us answer the question of where will your adventures take you? Enjoy.